Floor 23. The elevator is not moving. The lights are gone.
Not dimmed.
Not flickering.
Gone.
The only thing left in the world right now is a thin strip of orange emergency light at the base of the doors and the sound of Zara's own breathing, which her body is working very hard to keep controlled. Ji-han is not moving. He has not moved since the lights went out. He is the still center of a completely dark box 40 floors above Seoul, and his voice, when it comes, is quiet enough that it almost does not sound like a warning. Don't move. Not a command. A warning. Her grip on the toolkit tightens. Her heart is doing things inside her chest that hearts were absolutely not designed to do, and she is very aware of every single one of them. What is happening right now? His head turns toward her. She can barely make him out. Just the edge of his jaw, in the dark. There are 3 people between us and the lobby. None of them came for me. The floor of the elevator feels very far from the ground. What do you mean they didn't come for you? His eyes find her in the dark. They came for you. 3 words. 3 words, and the ground disappeared. 23 days before this elevator. Before any of this was even possible. Before Zara Mensa had any reason to know a man named Ji-han existed, let alone to be standing in the dark with him in a stopped box while 3 people she had never met waited 1 floor below for reasons she did not want to finish thinking about. Here is where it actually started. Not in a dark elevator. Not with 3 people in a lobby. In a penthouse 40 floors above the Han River, on a night when 12 women in evening gowns were competing for the attention of the most dangerous man in Seoul. A man who was not paying attention to a single one of them. The competition had been running for 6 weeks before that night. 100 women had submitted their names. Not casually, through channels that required the right family name, the right alliance value, and a clear-eyed understanding of what this marriage would cost and what it would deliver. 100 women. 12 had made it through Mrs. Yoon's filtering into this room on this night, wearing gowns selected weeks in advance. Every single one of those 12 women was watching Ji-han. Ji-han was not watching any of them. He was watching a woman in a navy work shirt who had a router cable in one hand and a diagnostic phone in the other, and was not looking at him or at the 12 women. She was looking at the wall-mounted access point behind the console table with the focused irritation of someone who has found a problem and is genuinely annoyed that it exists. There is something about the dispatch call that Zara received the morning this all started. Something that looked completely routine. I am going to tell you what was actually in that call. But not yet. Because the moment I do, everything you have already watched becomes a completely different story. Hold that thought. Stay with me. And before this story goes where it is going, if you are watching this channel for the first time right now, hit subscribe. Not because someone told me to ask you, because this channel puts real hours and real resources into stories like this one, and every subscription is what tells us the work is landing somewhere real. That one tap is the only way we know someone is here, someone is watching, and what we are building is worth continuing. One tap. Then I will tell you everything. Zara Mensa had been in Seoul for 2 years before any of this happened. 2 years of early mornings and late calls, and the pure satisfaction of fixing things that people with considerably more resources had given up on. She had a small apartment in Mapogu she had built into something that felt like herself. 3 plants, a good speaker, a photograph of her mother on the wall above the kitchen table. A 5-year plan she was 18 months ahead of schedule on. She was a field technician for a mid-sized corporate telecom company. The kind of work that puts you behind the walls of places that show the world a very different face. She had fixed networks in hotel basements, hospital server rooms, and the back offices of companies whose names she recognized from billboards. She was not just confident. She was the kind of good where the problem feels personally defeated when she solves it. She was also not someone who performed herself for rooms. That was a decision she made early and kept without revisiting. She had watched her mother spend a lifetime adjusting the volume of who she was depending on who was in the space. Quieter here, smaller there. And she had watched it cost her mother everything it was supposed to protect. Zara took one lesson from that. She was who she was in every room, at every volume. If the space had a problem with that, the space was the problem. She had no idea. On the Saturday, she picked up the dispatch notification for a network fault at a private residence in Gangnam that she was about to walk into the most consequential room of her life. She had 17 other things on her mind that morning. Ji-han was not one of them. Ji-han had been running the organization since he was 22 years old. Most people in Seoul did not know his name. That was intentional. The ones who needed to know it knew it in a very particular way. The way you know the name of something you would prefer not to think about directly. His organization moved through the city like weather. You felt the effects without understanding the cause. Businesses that needed protection had it. Rivals who overstepped found their overstepping corrected with a precision that discouraged any repetition. The machinery ran quietly and completely. Ji-han sat at the center of it with the stillness of a man who has learned that the most powerful thing in any room is the person who needs to do the least to be understood. He had taken over at an age when most men are still figuring out what they want. He had not had the luxury of that question. His father died on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the organization needed someone in the chair, and Ji-han was the only name that made sense to everyone who needed it to make sense. He had not chosen this life. The life had chosen him with the kind of authority that does not leave room for negotiation. 3 years ago, he had rebuilt the organization from near collapse after a rival faction dismantled its eastern operations in a move so precisely executed that Ji-han still thought about it with a grudging professional respect. The rebuild had cost him 3 years and everything that was not already the organization. He had come out the other side with something stronger than what was destroyed and something considerably emptier, where everything else used to be. Mrs. Yoon had watched all of this with the patience of a woman who understands that grief and rebuilding look identical from the outside. She had waited until the organization was stable. Then she had come to him with a plan. The plan was the wife competition. She had not called it that. She had named it a social introduction season, framed with the precision of someone who knows that how you name a thing determines how it is received. But Ji-han understood his mother. He had understood her since he was 14. What she was saying underneath the careful language was, you need an alliance, the alliance needs an anchor, the anchor needs to be a marriage, the marriage needs to be the right marriage, and I have already identified the candidates. You need to go through the process, so the decision has the appearance of choice. The correct answer, in Mrs. Yoon's calculation, was Rin. Rin was everything the role required. The daughter of a family whose alliance with Ji-han's organization would close a strategic gap that had existed since the Eastern collapse. Composed, trained from adolescence to occupy exactly this kind of space. She understood the world she was entering. From a purely operational standpoint, she was the correct answer. Ji-han had accepted this the way he accepted most things presented as organizational necessity. Completely, efficiently, without examining whether he felt anything about it. He was very good at not examining whether he felt anything. He had been doing it for 11 years. I need you to tell me something in the comments right now. Knowing what Ji-han's world looks like. Knowing what he gave up to run it. Knowing that there is a man named Mr. Choi who has been patiently watching for the one thing Ji-han will not trade away. Do you think a woman who fixes Wi-Fi is going to be enough to crack 11 years of a man choosing not to feel anything? Type still in Seoul right now in the comments. Drop your city, your country, and what time it is where you are. Because this story travels further than you might expect. Type it, then stay. Because what happens next is where everything actually starts. And somewhere in Seoul, in a room that nobody who would later matter had any idea existed yet, Mr. Choi was filing small pieces of information about a man he had been watching for 3 years. He was in no hurry. He never was. The network went down at 6:47 in the evening. Not the whole network. Ji-han's security and communication systems ran on separate hardened infrastructure that a standard fault would not touch. What went down was the residential Wi-Fi, the network serving the penthouse living spaces, and it went down in the middle of Mrs. Yoon's 4th carefully orchestrated gathering, at the precise moment when 12 women in evening wear were attempting to present their most polished versions of themselves. From a timing perspective, it was spectacularly inconvenient. Tae called the corporate telecom company within minutes. The company had a service contract with the building. More precisely, with the private equity firm that was the official registered occupant of record, which was how Ji-han's residential address appeared in every system that did not need to know otherwise. The dispatch came through as a standard fault call. The technician on shift closest to the address was assigned immediately. That technician was Zara. She noticed the elevator briefly. It was a very good elevator. The kind that costs more to install than a small house, and moves so smoothly you do not realize you are moving until you check the floor numbers. She filed this in the category of buildings that take their infrastructure seriously and returned her attention to the fault description on her phone. The doors opened. Tae was waiting in the corridor. He introduced himself as the building manager, asked her to follow him. She followed him. The corridor was long and quiet and very well lit, and it smelled like something expensive that was not trying to be obvious about it. She passed a set of large closed double doors and heard behind them the murmur of many voices having careful conversations.
She did not think much about it.
Corporate buildings had functions. People had meetings. She was here for the network fault. Tay opened the server room door, gave her a brief description of what had stopped working and when, and told her he would be nearby if she needed anything. She found the fault in 4 minutes. A misconfigured access point. Not a hardware failure, not a cable issue. A configuration error. Someone had gone into the system settings and changed something they should not have changed. She confirmed what she was seeing, pulled up the correction sequence, and initiated the reset. The reset would take approximately 8 minutes to propagate through the system. She was monitoring the reset progress when she heard the large double doors at the end of the corridor open. Then the sound of 12 conversations stopping at once. Then footsteps. She was still looking at her diagnostic tablet when she became aware that she was no longer alone in the server room doorway. She turned around. The man in the doorway was not Tay. He was very tall, very still, the kind of face that makes a room rearrange itself without him having to ask. Zara looked at him the way she looked at everything she had not been briefed on. Directly, briefly, without ceremony. System will be back online in about 6 minutes. The fault was a configuration issue, not hardware. If you need it expedited, I can walk you through a manual override, but it adds 10 minutes total. He said nothing. She waited. His voice came quietly. The 6 minutes is fine. She nodded and turned back to her diagnostic tablet. Behind her, Jihan stood in the doorway of his own server room and did something he almost never did.
He stayed.
Then he asked her how she knew it was a configuration issue and not a hardware fault. It was not the question she expected. People in buildings like this did not usually ask technical questions. They asked how long it would take, whether she needed anything, and then returned to whatever they had been doing. They did not stand in the doorway of a server room in an expensive suit asking about diagnostic methodology.
She explained it to him, precisely.
He listened with the focus of someone tracking every word and asked a follow-up that proved he had understood the first answer. She looked at him properly for the first time. Do you work in IT? Something moved across his face. There and gone before she could read it fully.
No.
You ask good questions for someone who doesn't work in IT. I find it useful to understand the systems I depend on. She tilted her head. That is a very careful way of describing what sounds like a control thing. His jaw shifted. Something interior. Not quite a smile. That is probably accurate. She almost smiled. She turned back to her diagnostic tool. The reset was at 70%. For more minutes. He did not leave. She did not ask him to. The conversation that followed was not supposed to happen. It moved the way conversations move when two people have both been quietly bored by everyone they have recently spoken to and neither is going to say so out loud. She told him about the configuration error, what it meant, why it happened, what whoever changed the settings had probably been trying to do. He told her, without specifics, that someone on a staff had been adjusting things they did not fully understand. She said that was a very common problem. The solution was either better training or less access, depending on how much you trusted the person versus how much you trusted the system. She handed him the completed diagnostic report for his signature. Their fingers did not touch. But when the tablet was in his hand and she was close enough that he could see the small gold studs in her ears and the faint work stain on her right index finger, Jihan went very still. Not his usual stillness. A different kind entirely. The kind that happens when a person's body understands something before their mind has caught up. He signed the report. She packed her toolkit. She told him further faults within 30 days were covered under the service contract. He said he understood. She picked up her bag, put her headphones on, and walked out. She was halfway down the block when she realized she had been smiling for the last 4 minutes, without knowing why. Her hand went to her face, like she was checking to make sure the smile was hers. Upstairs, 40 floors above the city, Jihan was standing at his living room window. 12 women were still there. The conversations had resumed. Mrs. Yoon was moving through the room with quiet efficiency. Rin was near the far window, composed and present, exactly where she was supposed to be. Jihan was watching none of them. He was watching the street far below. A figure in a navy blue shirt walking toward the subway entrance, getting smaller with every step. 30 seconds from disappearing entirely into the city. Tae appeared at his shoulder. Tae looked at where Jihan was looking. Tae said nothing. He was very good at saying nothing. Jihan did not call the telecom company the next day. He thought about it. He had a reason. A legitimate technical question about the configuration report that was not entirely fabricated. He picked up his phone twice. Put it down twice. He was not someone who did things without understanding why. He understood the organization. He understood the wire-thin calculations of alliance and threat and leverage that his world ran on. He did not understand why he was standing at his window at 11:30 at night thinking about a woman in a navy blue shirt who had told him his problem was either better training or less access. He also understood that not understanding something was not the same as being able to stop thinking about it. 2 days after the Wi-Fi call, Tae came to Jihan with information. There was a leak in the organization. Not new information. Jihan had suspected it for 3 months, the kind of suspicion built not from a single piece of evidence, but from a pattern of small things aligning in ways they should not. What was new was that Tae had narrowed the radius. 3 people. Someone inside the inner circle was feeding information to an outside party. And based on what that information had appeared to enable, the outside party was connected to Mr. Choi. Jihan listened to all of it without moving. Then he asked Tae which 3 people. Tae told him. Jihan was quiet for a long time. Watch all 3. Tell me nothing else until you are certain.
Tae left.
The office was very quiet after that. 3 years ago, Mr. Choi had been the architect of the Eastern Operation collapse. He had expected it to end Jihan. Instead, Jihan had rebuilt, and Mr. Choi had spent the following 3 years doing what he did better than almost anyone. Waiting. Now Mr. Choi had a man inside the organization. And the man inside was telling him things. Not about the organization's operations. Jihan was too careful for that kind of exposure. But about Jihan himself. His patterns. The things that were changing in them. Small things. A technician who had been in the building longer than a network fault required. A window Jihan stood at after the gathering when he was usually the first to leave. A search Tae had been asked to run that had nothing to do with the organization's business. Mr. Choi wrote all of it in his leather notebook. And in her apartment in Mapo-gu, Zara Mensah was trying to read a book. She was not reading the book. She was on page 47. She had been on page 47 for 35 minutes. She turned the page, then turned it back, then put the book down and looked at the ceiling for a while. She told herself this was about nothing. She was not convincing. Seoul does not notice when things begin. It never does. 4 days later, she got a second dispatch. Same address. The note said follow-up fault check, client request. Follow-up checks were typically scheduled at the 30-day mark under the service contract, not 4 days later. She flagged it to her supervisor, who confirmed the client had specifically requested the same technician. Also unusual. She thought about it for 45 seconds. Then she picked up her toolkit and went. She told herself it was because the job was the job and you did not question client requests within the scope of the contract. She told herself it had nothing to do with anything else. She was fairly convincing. Not entirely convincing, but fairly. There was no fault. She ran a full diagnostic in 8 minutes. The system was performing perfectly, the correction from her first visit holding with no degradation. She was writing up the all-clear report when she heard footsteps in the corridor and the server room door opened. Jihan was there again. He was not pretending to have a technical question this time. He had a tray. 2 cups of coffee, black, which she later found out was a guess that happened to be correct. He set the tray on the equipment shelf and said, without preamble, that he had questions about the configuration recommendations in the report she had filed. She looked at the coffee. She looked at him. The report is fairly self-explanatory. He set the tray down. I find that things which appear self-explanatory often contain the most useful details when looked at directly. She picked up one of the coffees. You can ask your questions. What followed was not about the configuration report. They both knew that within about 4 minutes. But the report gave them a structure, a set of coordinates inside which something else was happening, and they both seemed to understand without discussing it that the structure was useful and that neither of them was ready to name what was inside it. She found out he read primary sources, original documents, the accounts of people who were inside events rather than analyzing them afterward. She found this surprising and said so. He asked what she read. She told him everything and nothing in particular, that she went through phases. Last month had been structural engineering. This month was West African architecture. He asked why. Because things built to last fascinate me. Things designed knowing they would still need to be standing long after the person who built them was gone. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he understood that completely. She looked at him. He was looking at his coffee cup with a face she could not fully read. Something more interior than his usual controlled blankness. Something that said she had accidentally landed somewhere real in him, and he was not prepared for that. She noticed. She did not push it. She finished her coffee, filed the all-clear report, and left. On the subway home, she did not pretend she did not know why she was smiling. That was progress. Mrs. Yoon noticed on the third visit. She had not been told there was a third visit. Jihan had not mentioned it, and Tae, whose loyalty had its own architecture that included not volunteering information about Jihan's private movements, had said nothing. She found out because she arrived at the penthouse unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon and found the building service log on the front desk. Same technician. Third visit in 2 weeks. No fault reported on the second or third call. She set the log down exactly where she had found it. She walked to the elevator. She wrote it to the 40th floor. Jihan was at his desk. She sat across from him. She asked very calmly how the network was performing. He said it was performing well. She said she was glad to hear it. Then she asked whether he had given further thought to the 5th gathering, which she was planning for the following Saturday. He said yes. She asked if he had feedback on the candidates following the 4th gathering. He said nothing he had not already told her. She looked at him for a long moment. She said Rin's family had been in contact, that they were eager to understand the timeline, that the alliance implications of a prolonged process were something she wanted him to factor into whatever he was currently factoring. Jihan said he understood. Mrs. Yoon stood, smoothed her dress with one precise gesture, and walked to the door. At the door, she stopped. Without turning around, she said she hoped the network continued to perform well, and that repeated service visits for a system in good working order was the kind of thing that drew the attention of people who were paid to notice patterns. She left. Jihan sat at his desk for a long time after the door closed. Rin had noticed before Mrs. Yoon did. She had not been told anything. No one had said a word to her. But Rin had spent her entire adult life in rooms where the real conversation was happening underneath the visible one, and she had developed a precision in reading those invisible conversations that was extraordinary. She had felt the shift in Jihan's attention at the 4th gathering. Not a dramatic withdrawal, just a quality of absence in his presence. A man whose mind was partly somewhere else. She did not know what had caused it. She intended to find out. Meanwhile, 2 floors below the penthouse, Tae had completed the background search Jihan had asked him to run. On the technician.
On Zara.
What Tae had found was not what either of them expected. He had not told Jihan yet. He was still deciding exactly how. She came back a 4th time. She arrived 8 minutes before her scheduled window. The corridor was empty when she turned into it.
Or it should have been.
Tae was standing near the server room door with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, deep in a briefing that had the clipped shorthand of people who work in environments where discretion is not optional. He had not checked the corridor.
He had no reason to.
The penthouse did not have unexpected visitors. Except today it did. She heard Jihan's name. She heard the words, the boss's instructions. She heard a reference to choice faction, a meeting, and a level of operational detail that did not belong in any conversation connected to a private equity firm. She did not move. Her tablet was pressed against her chest. Her eyes were on the wall directly in front of her. Her mind was moving very fast through recalibrations that were fundamentally altering the shape of everything she thought she had been walking into for the last 2 weeks. Her pulse hit something that would absolutely concern a cardiologist. Tae finished the call. He turned around. He saw her. They looked at each other for a moment that lasted considerably longer than it actually was. I think, Tae said, very quietly, that we need to have a conversation. Zara's voice came out steadier than the state of her internal organs deserved. I think so too. He took her to a small meeting room off the corridor, closed the door, and told her. Not everything. He was not someone who told everything to anyone, but enough. Enough that the private equity firm became what it actually was. Enough that Jihan's name acquired its actual weight. Enough that the man who had brought her coffee and asked about West African architecture and listened to her explain network faults with the focused attention of someone genuinely interested was now revealed to be something that did not exist in any of the categories she had been filing him under for 2 weeks. She sat with that for a while. Tae let her. She asked one question. She asked whether Ji-han had known, from the very first visit, that she did not know who he was.
Tae said yes.
She asked whether he had corrected her. Tae said no. The room was very quiet. Then she stood up, picked up her toolkit, and asked Tae to tell Ji-han she would not be taking any further service calls for this address.
And now, right now.
This is where I tell you about the dispatch call. The dispatch call that morning had not been generated by the standard assignment algorithm. It had been manually routed to her name by someone in the system with access to the assignment queue who had run her background profile 3 days before she even knew the address existed. That profile had not been pulled by the telecom company, not by the building, by someone who needed a legitimate service technician to access Ji-han's residential network. Someone who needed the access to come through a real work order so that Ji-han's security systems would not flag it. Someone who needed her to fix the problem and leave without knowing what had been placed inside the corrected access point. She had not fixed a network fault. She had been sent in to repair someone else's trap.
She did not know any of this.
Not yet. She walked out of that building with her toolkit in her grip and a face under immaculate control, got on the Seoul subway, stared at her hands the whole ride home, and told herself that every conversation she had had in that building had been a performance on his side.
She almost believed it.
She had been on her way out of the building. She had her toolkit. She had press lobby. The doors had started closing, and she had told herself the anger she was feeling was clean and rational and entirely justified. Then his hand had come through the gap. She had not stepped aside.
He had stepped in. The doors had closed.
And Ji-han had stood there in his expensive suit in her elevator looking at her with an expression that was not the controlled neutral she had catalogued across for visits. He said her name. Not Ms. Mensah. Not the technician. Her name. Zara. The configuration error you fixed. It was not accidental.
She heard that.
Someone planted it. A piece of embedded code placed inside the access point you corrected. Something that would have given an external party remote access to the network. You removed it when you ran the correction sequence. The floor of the elevator felt very distant from the ground. You are the only person who knows the access point has been restored. That means whoever planted it knows your name, your company, and your dispatch record. Everything in her went very still. The dispatch call, the manual routing, the background profile run 3 days before she even knew this building existed. She had not fixed a network fault. She had been sent in to restore someone else's trap. And whoever had set the trap had been watching long enough to know that she would fix it correctly, completely, and would not know to look for what had been placed inside it. Her blood dropped to a temperature Seoul does not typically reach until February. The elevator shuddered.
Stopped.
Floor 23. The lights went out. Not dimmed. Not flickered.
Gone.
Don't move. His voice in the dark. Not a command. A warning. Her grip on the toolkit tightened so hard her fingers ached. Her heart was doing things hearts were absolutely not designed to do, and she was aware of every single one of them. What is happening right now? She heard him shift.
Just barely.
There are 3 people between us and the lobby. None of them came for me. The elevator did not move. 23 floors above the lobby. 3 people she had never met waiting below for reasons she had not finished thinking through. What do you mean they didn't come for you? His eyes found hers in the dark. They came for you. That is where part 1 ends. Type send part 2 in the comments.
Right now.
Not because I need reminding. Because I need to see how many of you are sitting there right now with exactly that look on your face. What Ji-han says next in that elevator. What Zara does with what she hears. And what Mrs. Yoon finds out about Zara Mensah that rewrites every single calculation in this story. Type send part 2. I will read every single one.